Today's topic is going to be employee engagement during COVID. And this has become, it was initially considered kind of a soft topic, but I think given the length of the pandemic and the stress that many employees are going under during this period of time, I think what we're seeing is a lot of employers are noticing stress, anxiety, increased absenteeism, maybe reduced levels of engagement, more bickering, more fighting. All of these things are kind of natural offshoots of a highly stressed situation where people really don't know what's going to happen in the future. And despite some good news with respect to vaccinations and the possibility of getting vaccinations across Canada within the next months, there still remains a real issue in dealing with employees in a manner in which not only encourages engagement, but leads to an overall better sense of mental health in the workplace. So I've got a couple of topics that I want to talk about on how you can do these. And again, many consider them soft topics. I think that they have become incredibly important during this period of pandemic. The first thing is communication, open communication with your employees. Most of what I've read and most of what I've experienced as a management side labor and employment lawyer has been that employers who are very good in communicating with their employees about all issues relating to the pandemic, and that includes remote workplaces, remote working, accommodation, flexible shifts, all of that have been in a much better position to deal with their employees when it comes to kind of increased levels of engagement and better feedback. So we want to encourage employers to be good communicators. Let them know ahead of time what the expectations are, where the company is in terms of dealing with pandemic issues, whether it be vaccinations or remote working or hours or performance expectations. That open communication is absolutely essential during these times. The second thing is being present. And by being present, I mean be available to employees who may express issues, or constructively watch for the red flags. If you see an employee who is struggling, or you get an employee complaint or a concern, deal with it. Don't sit on it. All right. Have a process in place where you can deal with those employees' concerns immediately, even if you can't solve it. Acknowledge it, tell the employee you're dealing with it, and then follow up with it. I think that employees who understand that their employer will address their concerns, all right, are much more likely to bring things forward, which allows them to be addressed and not fester, which creates an employee who's probably a lot happier, is probably more present at work, and probably reduces attendance and absenteeism issues. The third thing is change your expectations. These are not normal times, whether it's performance management or reviews or addressing your employees on a day-to-day basis. Change those expectations, all right? Employees may have multiple stressors, and to deal with those, some of those that we've talked about, elder care, child care, homeschooling, concerns about their job, concerns about the future, concerns about where the country is going in vaccinations. All of these things create this mix of anxiety and stress for employees that you need to address. And by changing your expectations and further engaging, and by engaging, I mean reaching out to employees. You don't need to sit back. As I discussed earlier on, we have some, look where the flags are. Are you seeing reduced levels of engagement and absenteeism? If you're seeing those things, address them on a proactive basis. Document, take notes, make sure that you have a good document trail of what's been occurring, but being open, all right, and being present is very important. Check your insurance policy. Is EAP available? Is there a resource that you can turn your employees to over and above what's, the general talking to your supervisor or manager? Is there a resource that they can go to if they're struggling and need some assistance? Touch base regularly. It can be via Teams or meetings or Zoom, all of that on an ongoing basis, just to do face-to-face communications. And it doesn't always have to be business. Treat it as every once in a while having a Friday afternoon meeting, just to see how people are doing, to allow people to see other people and engage them on a face-to-face basis via technology is all very, very important. having that virtual water cooler, even for a small period of time, reconnects people to their employment and does make a difference in long term. Look forward and talk about the future, right? Understand that employees are going to be a little bit anxious about what's going on. If there are legitimate concerns about where the business is going, I think that in a very kind of structured way, those should be provided to employees so that they understand what's happening. It doesn't mean you have to give them a huge heads up about things about terminations or anything like that, but it does mean that you have to be open about what the challenges are, how you're addressing them, and how you think that this will put you in a better position in the future. The longer employees have to adjust to news, the better it is. So give notice. Don't if there's going to be a layoff that you need to communicate, right? Sometimes employees understanding that there are economic issues that may be arising and keeping them up to date on those so that when the layoff comes, it's not a complete surprise, might be a good idea. Give lead time to employees to adjust, and that might be for childcare arrangements. For example, if there's a big project that comes on stream and it requires a certain amount of dedicated work, I think we need to ensure that employees have lead time to change their child or elder care arrangements given homeschooling and everything else. And if you are thinking about bringing employees back to work, and there will be a repatriation of employees, right? Have a plan. Talk about it, set out what the plan is to return to a physical workforce. You're going to have to deal with people, and we've seen this over the last year, you're going to have to deal with people who don't want to return to work. You're going to have to deal with people who are dying to return to work. Those are the various extremes that are going to kind of drive your policy and your process on how you deal with the repatriation of employees. It may take some time. You may want to allow for a gradual return and communication and an understanding of where you are in terms of any vaccination process or safety. You still may want to insist and advise that there will be, say, health and safety protocols so people aren't concerned about any risk to their health and safety. And I think you want to be open and available to discuss any accommodation that an employee may need, and then treat it as any accommodation that you might otherwise get. If it's a legitimate human rights accommodation, you still have to go through all the steps. And the final point is be flexible. We're not out of the woods yet. I think we need to understand that employees still want information, but they don't want to see inflexibility. I think that actually pushes them back in terms of bringing issues forward, performance, and being present. So flexibility is incredibly important, and that is incredibly hard. I have many clients who themselves in managing are overly stressed and anxious, and then they're dealing with employees who are making their life more difficult by making it harder for them to bring them back to work or just to work on an ongoing basis. So be flexible, have patience, and address issues as they come up. And by all means, have an open communication process with your employees. And I think you're going to find that we can get through this process, get to the other side, and hopefully get back to some sense of normalcy. Thank you very much.